Well, good afternoon. Welcome. This is the first executive thought leadership podcast. I'm Ryan Collier. I'm a CPA and an executive leader, focusing in audit and compliance. My specialties are in SOC reporting and high trust, as well as broader IT risk and compliance. I really focus on helping organizations build trust through high quality assurance, stronger governance, and practical security programs. I co lead the SOC reporting practice and I lead the high trust practice here at Insight Assurance. I'm also a lead the firm's system of quality management, as well as other initiatives around quality management, training, and talent development, and responsible for our firm-wide use of AI to help make audits more efficient without replacing professional judgment. And yeah, happy to be part of the program. And Flora, I'll let you intro.
Hey, I'm Frances and Martin. I'm from Argentina. I'm an associate director here in C Assurance. I'm working on the SOC 2 practice. And my experience is mostly as an external auditor, but also as an internal auditor. So while trying to maintain SOC 2 quality on our work, I'm also familiar with client relationship because I've been on the other side of the practice when I was an internal audit. So I would say my main focus is also like client experience.
All right. So I think a good place to begin when talking about really audit quality, right? If we think of kind of the three main phases of an engagement: planning, execution, and issuance, right? I think one of the big misconceptions with audit quality or quality in general is that busy work does not necessarily mean high quality, right? A thick binder, a thick work paper file does not equal a high quality audit. I always kind of think of quality as having a really clear and robust risk assessment. You have targeted testing, there's strong evidence, there's rationale to support the documented conclusions, and then you have a robust and consistent review. And I'm curious, Floor, from your perspective, and both of us are coming from Big Four firms where global we had global audit methodologies. But from your perspective and your experience, sort of planning, supervising, reviewing, what are your perspectives on kind of engagement quality overall?
Yeah, I think I agree with all of what you said, but especially all those like big work papers. I think that things should be as simple as someone coming from the outside, seeing the work papers and understanding right, like immediately, like how the auditor got their conclusions. Like if we think as auditors that something was like no exceptions noted, just opening the work paper and saying like, yeah, I can see here the rationale from the auditors, how they are supporting their opinion, the evidence. So yeah, as you said, like really complex work papers are sometimes like worse than the ones that are simple and right to the point. So yeah.
Yeah, all good points, Floor. 100% agree. And our mission statement at Insight is delivering quality, assuring trust. So it's good to kind of define like, well, what is quality, right? And I think there's kind of a misnomer that quality does not necessarily equate to perfection or perfect documentation, right? It's reliable conclusions. The goal is trust, right? The stakeholders ultimately should be able to rely on the report because the work behind that was disciplined, right? We used professional judgment. The process is repeatable. Equality is not really a single event that happens at the end of the engagement. I often will I think it's really important to tie our procedures, our auditing procedures, back to the why, to have purpose driven testing rather than a checklist, right? Because it's very easy to follow a checklist,
Yeah.
grill the burger, melt the bun, it's very easy to follow a checklist, grill the burger, flip the bun, melt the cheese. And if you get into that checklist approach, it's very easy to miss something if you don't understand the why. You know, why are we testing a control like this?
Yeah.
I think that goes back to having a quality mindset, and the role of, say, professional skepticism, right? When we are performing our procedures, if the auditor is not sufficiently documenting the procedures, right? And if our work papers need a live explanation in order for a reviewer to
Mhm.
understand them, as that's a quality issue, right?
Mhm.
You should be any reviewer, any auditor should be able to pick up the work paper and be able to read it and understand it without any prior knowledge of the engagement. Quality, a good quality work paper really kind of reads like a short narrative. It should demonstrate what we tested, what we saw, what it means, why did we reach the conclusion that we reached? And that kind of goes back to the quality mindset, well, what would disconfirm this? What could make the evidence misleading?
Mm.
Is it almost too clean to be true? And that goes back to the difference of using a checklist, or a cookie cutter versus having consistent standardization for quality. And I know just from working with you and your team, you have really good reviewers who I think kind of understand our processes and our quality. Um, Wondering if you can speak a little bit to that, like how did you coach and train? What are the specific things that you have done to help coach and mentor your team to kind of get them to the same level that you're at?
Mhm. So I think that one of the like it goes like back to why, like the question why, right? So every time like I start mentoring someone new, I would go like asking them like, why do you think our clients need a SOC 2? So like, well, I don't know, like is it SOC 2 just an audit report or an audit opinion? I'm like, yeah, but why? Like why are they looking for? Like so I try to explain like the reasons behind like a customer is looking for a SOC tool, like maybe like a contract or that they want to what they want to show to their users or business partners and things like that. I feel like, and then that goes to all of the aspects of the work, like explaining the why of everything. So, for example, when we are talking about a control and like, why do you think this control is here? Why do you think the client designed this control? Well, I think they want to achieve this and that. So once they understand like why those controls are there or why they are doing that job, whenever the circumstances change, as you said, like instead of doing like a check the box audit, they would understand like, well, these change from what I'm usually seeing with clients. So right now I know how to change my approach because of this and like understanding like the reasoning behind. That's something that I always try to teach my team members, understanding like why they're doing things, why our customers are doing or pursuing this audit in particular. And I know I feel like that helps a lot to them also when they are like read like my reviewers, for example, when they are reading work papers, they would say like, well, this work paper needs to show me not only the why the control is there, but also the how and the frequency. So they start like answering questions the same as a control design does. And that's how they can identify like which question is not being responded. I feel like it's something like that. I know that we talk a lot about like control design, and I know that also applies to quality. So do you think that those questions are always like repeated among like the
So, one of the ways that we ensure audit quality all the way throughout the engagement, and as Floor mentioned, right, it comes from the top down. So, one of the things that has come from the top down is a system of quality management, right, and ongoing coaching and training. So, every engagement goes through multiple levels of review, right, and that does really accomplishes two things. One, it provides opportunity for correction and instruction and redirection, right? And it provides checks and balances, right? No audit is going to be perfect, right? There is, audit risk, right? There's just a level of risk of a material misstatement that, hey, we get it wrong, right? But we mitigate that risk through multiple layers of review. So every single engagement goes through a level one detail review, a level two quality assurance review, as well as a final review, right? CPAs are involved at every stage of the engagement. And that is how we ensure quality, not as a milepost, right? As I mentioned earlier, like at the end of the engagement, but quality is imbued throughout the entire engagement. So our auditors receive coaching and training where they need it. The detail reviewers are providing the coaching and training, down. Everything comes from the top. I'll toss to you. I'll do the lead in, but it's going to be along the lines of like three pillars of quality evidence. So completeness, accuracy, and relevance, right? So I think you can probably speak to a what do those three things mean? Completeness, accuracy, and relevance, or the sufficiency and the appropriateness. So I'll kind of tee it up that way. So, quality is really imbued throughout the entire engagement, right? Beginning, in the execution phase where auditors are obtaining evidence from our clients and then examining it. And Flora, from your perspective, I guess what are some earmarks or identifiers of some quality evidence?
Yeah. So mostly like the evidence should be first of all like complete. And we need to make sure that the evidence that we receive is complete, that for example, if we are talking about like a population, let's make sure that that's complete for the examination period that we need. So how are we going to be checking that? Let's do an example with a population for all of the three pillars that I'm going to go through. So the first pillar would be to be complete. So if I have a list, a population of, let's say, new hires, I need to know that those new hires are all of the ones that were onboarded during the examination period. How can we do that? Well, we can check filters, parameters from the system to see that that is covering like new hires, and that it could be like filtering by start date and that it was generated, right? That would be like a complete report. Also, to see the accuracy of that, we would need to see that, for example, the number of rows that were generated as part of that report, we can see that from the system. So maybe if it is showing like 5 lines, then we go back to the evidence to see that those 5 lines are there. And how can we know that that is relevant? Well, it depends on the control that we're going to be testing. It depends on our objectives. So if I'm going to be testing terminations, of course, that is not relevant. It's going to be relevant for another control that is asking for an activity or a control being performed by new joiners. So all of these three pillars should be applicable and need to apply to all of the evidence that we obtain, not only for the execution phase, but also for the planning. And I feel like that's something that we always try to coach our team members with all of the systems that we have here so they can follow that guideline. Would you say that like that which is the pillar that maybe is the more challenging, or that you would say that you would need to focus during like any phase in particular?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Oh man. So I think one of the challenges is completeness, right? So evidence covering the full period, right? I
Mhm.
think what happens a lot is clients are providing us with documentation and the list may appear to be complete, but there's no date. And I know it's so small, but oftentimes, we're pulling documentation from a platform or there's a screenshot and the client is being, they're being very upfront and they just sent the screenshot, right? And they know that it's from today, but there is no date or there's no marker, there's no metadata like actually confirming that they took the screenshot, today. And so often our feedback is, hey, this screenshot, what the screenshot is showing is sufficient, but this screenshot is not complete because I don't know when the screenshot was taken. And we can't just rely on the client saying, well, I just took that today, because trust is not a control, right?
Mhm.
And I think sometimes clients, may perceive that professional judgment or the professional skepticism as being a cynic. And it's
Yeah.
not. It's skepticism does not equal cynicism. It is, hey, in order to do and to demonstrate quality throughout the engagement, we have to have professional skepticism. And if the screenshot does not have the date, well, we don't know when that was taken. It's not that we don't believe you, but again, trust is not a control. So oftentimes the evidence is sufficient. It shows what we need to see. We ask for the green circle. We can see it's a green circle, but I don't know when that green circle was created.
Mhm.
Was that last year, today, yesterday? I don't know.
Yeah. And that
And so
goes
it's
also
important.
like
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
check.
Go.
Sorry, that goes also like to check the box engagements. That's something that we are like not doing. But um, I would say sometimes clients are like, "Well, this is the same screenshot that I sent you for my last report," and maybe someone could say like, "Yeah, well, if you can confirm that it's the same," but that's how we are not achieving like our we're not approaching, sorry, our audits. And that's why we are going back and saying like, okay, this is not a checkbox audit. We need to see that again. Can we observe that during a meeting, or can you show a timestamp? So I think that that also goes back to what you were saying.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there is a relationship between audit quality and the client experience, right? Those two are
Mhm.
really connected. So in the book of shoulds, the big book of shoulds, quality, it should reduce surprises, right? So when engagement quality is high, clients should feel that through clearer requests, right? So at the very beginning of the engagement, when we're assembling the document request list, if those requests aren't clear, then the client's going to kind of know, why are you asking for this? It's not clear, right? So it should also result in kind of fewer rework cycles, right? I asked for the green circle. They give me a blue square. Well, why did they give me the blue square? Maybe the request wasn't clear, right? There should be fewer emergency follow-ups, right? Again, if the request is clear, they're going to fulfill the request more clearly. Um, there should be fewer follow-ups. And so ultimately, quality is reducing or pushing down the amount of surprises because it's generating more confidence in outcomes. And so I guess you kind of speak to that a little bit. Um, speak to the connections between like the audit quality and the client experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's something that we can see during like maybe the execution phase when we are actually testing the controls. I feel like since we are approaching these conversations from the beginning and like performing our quality work, like reviewing the controls and understanding like what they are looking for and what criteria they are trying to meet. So then at that point we understand the evidence that we need or is required for that control, so that like bulk of questions or confirmations after like a quality review of that list of controls like make us like to send all the questions at the beginning. And then as you said, the process follows like super smoothly until the end, like when we are issuing the report. And as you said, like there are no surprises. And so we have different layers of reviews. So something that I know is that since we have like, for example, the first layer of review, at that point, all of that conversation is being reviewed by someone and send that to a client. And then when it gets to the second layer of review, all of those questions are being responded. All of the evidence is complete, accurate, and relevant. And then, of course, when it goes to a final review by a CPA from our team, so there are like almost no other comments or questions for the client. So I guess that means that the experience of the clients are like better rather than when you have like multiple follow-ups during the entire phase that make things slower, a lot of back and forth maybe with the client. So I guess that's why I feel like quality is one of the key things to provide like a strong client experience.
Yeah.
You as a final reviewer, would you say that you can tell like how quality is helping that process?
Well, 100%. So it's very apparent when I'm performing a final review, when I get in the file and without fail, right? If there's a minor misspelling, and I want to be clear, right? So proofreading does not necessarily, a final review does not just mean, oh, I'm proofreading, right? Because there could be a minor misspelling, and yeah, you could say, boy, gee, this doesn't seem high quality because it's misspelled, but that's a relatively minor thing overall. However, it is a good indicator if I see a lot of misspellings or maybe something's missing a sign off. You can get a really good feel very early on what the quality of the engagement has been up until that point. It's a lot like, if you're going to a restaurant and you sit down and you can kind of tell that the table maybe is not as clean as you would have liked it, right? Like, okay,
Mhm.
well, maybe something's a little bit off, but we'll kind of look past that. But then there's no silverware on the table. And then the glass looks so now the red flags are out, right? And you're like, all right, now I'm a little bit worried about food safety at this restaurant because there have been maybe three minor things that in the aggregate kind of raise this concern. And so when I'm doing a final review, I'm not necessarily hunting for those things, but they are there and present. And then conversely, when I'm looking at a file and I see like everything's kind of neat and orderly, like, okay. and I see
Mhm.
that there are no missing sign-offs, okay. And maybe I'm looking in an area where historically there have been misspellings or maybe some testing that has not been and I see that, oh, that's complete. It looks very okay. So now I know, it just feels a little bit higher quality. Using the restaurant metaphor, if you go to a fine dining restaurant or even a fast casual restaurant and you have the restaurant manager is walking around and what are they doing? How was your meal? How was everything? Right. So you know that quality is coming from the top down because you have someone walking the floor and asking you, was your meal prepared appropriately? Was it the right temperature? Right. Those are just checks and balances. And so
Yeah.
on an engagement, you can see those discussions that have happened. They're very evident because the low hanging fruit, the mistakes that normally present themselves just aren't there.
Yeah. There is something that I wanted to ask you about quality. I know that we talk about like training, top of the the tone of the top, I'm sorry, the quality assurance system that we have in place. But what other tools do you think that nowadays we have in order to help our team to achieve that quality? I'm sure like nowadays manual work is not the only way of doing things. And
Yeah.
I know that you have perfect answer to this.
Yeah, well, our firm's initials are IA, right? And, if you were to kind of, reverse those or look, put them in a mirror, like what would be reflected back? It would be
Or saying
AI,
in
right?
Spanish. In
Yeah.
Spanish, it's inteligencia artificial.
Yeah. So, I think AI, which, for the last 12 months, AI was like, it was everywhere, right? Everybody's worried. Oh, all these jobs are going to be replaced. Well, AI is not a replacement for professional judgment, but it can and does improve audit quality and engagement quality when used correctly, right? So ultimately, it's reducing a lot of the administrative drag. We use AI when we generate request lists. If we've got 80 controls, there's potentially, 60 to 80 requests that have to be generated. When I was starting my career, like that is literally something that you did on day one. Look at the request list from the prior year, make updates. If you had
Mhm,
a brand new client, you were drafting a request list from scratch, which was horrible. And now we can generate document request lists based upon the control activity, in minutes, for 80 items. We're still reviewing those to make sure that they're relevant, like we just talked about, because if the request is unclear, that's going to result in a fulfilling of the request that is not accurate. But yeah, AI proofreading, validating that, if there are multiple testing attributes in a control, hey, if changes are supposed to be authorized, tested, and approved, did we actually test that changes were authorized, tested, and approved? Or did the auditor just test that they were, authorized and tested, but not approved? And so AI can quickly surface those anomalies and outliers a lot faster.
mhm. And also, or not only like saving like the testers time by doing that, but also like that extra time that they have. The idea from us at least is that those testers invest that time in quality. So I feel like
Yep.
it's not only that AI is helping with the quality of like those kind of things that you mentioned, but also is helping to improve our quality in other things because people has more time to like get involved in those other things. What other things do you think that is helping like this use of the AI in our case?
Yeah, the value add. So creating a request list does not really provide value to our customers. It largely is a to-do list, right?
Hmm.
What provides value is creating margin in the auditor's time, right? By taking 10 minutes to create a request list rather than 8 hours. Well, now the auditor has 7 hours and 50 minutes to have a conversation, a high touch conversation with the client, and that provides value. Going through what could go wrong and the scoping exercise. Well, now they have, almost a full day that they can sit with the client or, virtually or in person, largely virtually, and go through and to better understand the client's environment, again, to bring clarity. Why? So that the overall engagement quality has increased. I think the value add in leveraging AI and as it relates to audit quality is we're offloading largely administrative tasks to AI so that we can create margin in our auditor's day so they can provide real value to our clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
So I think we can go one of two areas. So we can either kind of speak to a quality management system as a means to take quality from an otherwise heroic effort into a repeatable process. And we can speak about, hey, how that establishes guardrails around methodology, training, supervision. The other place we could go, although we kind of talked about this at the beginning, but as the tone of the top, is culture, right? So what you permit, you promote, right? Quality is what you tolerate, right? So we could talk about how we are improving audit quality by not normalizing unclear work papers, rushed conclusions, and what a quality culture looks like. So we can go either one of those two places.
I
I think how I want to close is you can. My thought for closing is, well, what are some items, some how I want to phrase it, but I basically want to leave it as an open question, like, well, what are some items that clients what are some markers that clients, or questions that clients should ask when they are evaluating other firms that
well,
speak to the quality of that firm? Does that make sense?
yeah.
I'm thinking like you post it to the LinkedIn and then you end with the question like, okay, so hey, what are some attributes of a firm that are important to clients, or what are some things that clients need to be looking for in a
Mhm.
firm that are evident of high quality work, right? And then yeah, yep,
And what do you think, Ryan, that maybe I can ask a question and you can elaborate on that
sure.
so it's clear.
You're
Okay,
gonna go.
so
You ask.
Ryan,
Oh,
what are the
sorry,
things
I stepped on you. Start
No,
over.
no worries. So Ryan, what do you think are the key things our clients should be looking at when they are maybe choosing like which audit firm they're going to go with, or when they are evaluating like different audit firms?
Yeah, I think some good questions to ask a firm when you're evaluating them would be, ask them to tell you about their business processes. Ask them to explain their methodology. Ask them to explain how they approach each client individually and listen to their responses. If it sounds like they treat every client the same, well, it's probably a cookie cutter approach, right? If you are on a platform, maybe you don't let them know that you're on a platform. Tell them that you're doing this engagement manually and listen to how they would approach your engagement from a manual perspective. Because if you're using a platform, you might have a really well established methodology, but again, it might be cookie cutter. So pretend that you are performing the engagement without a platform and listen to how they would apply that. And then reveal, like, okay, well, I'm on platform XYZ. How does that change things? And there should be a change there, right?
Mhm.
So I think though, so I would begin with that. I would ask them what their approach is if you have exceptions, right? Do they automatically treat the exception as qualifying the report? At Insight, we try to not say the E word, the exception word. It's always, hey, we have a potential finding,
Mhm.
right? But we're going to have a discussion with the client because maybe, we're not fully understanding what the evidence is showing. So we start with the finding and then we have a discussion. We make sure there's alignment before there's an exception. And then obviously we're applying professional judgment. If the exception is material and pervasive, then we're having a discussion around qualifying the report and ask them, hey, if my report is qualified, what are my options for me to remediate that control? And do you offer any services around validating that the remediation was performed and offering, limited assurance through perhaps an agreed upon procedure engagement? I would ask those questions to start.
And let's say that I'm the audit firm and you're the client. And me as an audit firm, I'm telling you that you will have your final report in 2 weeks. What would you say? What follow-up questions would you do?
I would say nothing great ever came from a microwave, but I've never had a meal from a slow cooker that tastes bad. Right. So if there's a firm that's providing reports in with an aggressive timeline, whether that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I would say, okay, explain that to me because that's it's possible, but I need to understand the why and the how, right? If I came to you and asked you to build me a house and you said, well, I could build a house in 30 days, I'm not so sure I would want to live in that house. Give me some references. Give me 5 of your most recent clients, and I want to speak to them and see, did they actually deliver it in 30 days, and what was that like? Google is a good friend. Reddit is a great friend. Go to
Right.
Reddit and look for that firm on Reddit and see, hmm, what do the Redditors say about a 2-week audit turnaround? I think what you're going to find is, if you're eating steak from a microwave, it's probably really, really hot on the outside and maybe frozen cold in the middle. And that's not going to be super delicious. I don't want to have that. Right.
Yeah. Are there any other like unrealistic promises, like Ryan as an auditor, that you heard from other like audit firms, like promises to clients, like, I don't know, no exceptions, or
Yeah.
have you ever heard like any other
Well,
things that maybe clients can use as a red flag?
we have, and I think what we often see, because we're not the cheapest firm, we're not the most expensive. We try to be in the middle of the road, and certainly we're not for everybody. But what I will say is we often will have clients, or prospects who come and say, well, I'm going to go with firm Z this year. We're like, absolutely, we understand. We're here if you have any questions or if you're running into anything. And then they come back the next year after they've gone through their audit. And what they've said is, yeah, the firm promised that I would have an unqualified report, or they made a bunch of promises. And ultimately, any accounting firm is actually prohibited from making a promise. We can't guarantee your report's going to be unqualified. We cannot guarantee that you're not going to have exceptions because it violates independence. And those are kind of red flags, right? If you're speaking with a firm and they're making those promises, I would have a very skeptical mind about that. So just like our firm's culture is very quality forward. I mean, literally in our mission statement, right? Delivering quality, assuring trust. Quality ultimately is what you tolerate, both from the accounting firm perspective as well as the customer perspective, right? So if you tolerate a report that's turned around in 2 weeks, what does that say about, your organization's culture of quality? And I think the fastest way ultimately to improve audit quality is for any accounting firm, is to stop normalizing rushed engagements, assumptions that are unchallenged, and I would say procedures or work papers that are unclear. I mean, that's from my perspective, but Floor, interested to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah. So, something that we always communicate to our teams is that, of course, like due dates and deadlines are like super important, but nothing is more important than quality. Like sharing that culture within the team, where like they all know that our main goal is providing like a quality work, helps us like to them to focus on what is actually important. So, of course, we want to. Of course, we deliver the things as we have to do. But if we need to take some extra time to make sure that the report or the opinion that we are delivering is like high quality work, we are going to be taking that time. And I think that our clients understand that, because that's how we show them that we work. And that matters, as you said, like the things that you are letting or not.
Yeah, 100%. I would say, for myself, and I think for the firm, is ultimately audit quality is really the discipline of earning trust every time, every engagement.